It's another episode of the Ranting Cast / upon further review. We'll get to that segment later, but I am Frank R. Curry. I have Kristy with me. She's with the Hockey Writers. She writes about the New Jersey Devils, so that means we're going to be talking a lot of Devils hockey today. If you haven't been watching them play, you should. I've looked at the numbers. They're a fun team. You should really check them out. It's weird to say because Kristy, we're going to go right into it. First off, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, getting ready for a late night.
Yeah. But to go right into the Devils, I mean, right away, the home opener, we were hearing the Fire Lindy chants.
Mm-hmm.
And, the whole talk in the offseason for the Devils was, how long, Lindy should have been fired months ago. How long does he last? And then everything, how does this affect the team? And they lose their first two games. Miles Wood came out after the first, before I think game 2, and said this is a must-win game, and then they lose.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've just rattled off 6 out of 7 wins. What have you noticed out of the Devils so far? And then after that, I'm gonna go over some numbers that they have.
This is a really, like you said, this is a really fun team to watch. And I think the Fire Lindy chants were a little premature because you have to think you have 5. I think there was 5 new players that are coming into a brand new system. You had 2 defensemen, 2 forwards. So of course it's going to take some time for everyone to gel and learn the system. Lindy Ruff has brand new, assistant coaches and associate coach now. So it was premature to try and get rid of him after 2 losses when you just need time to kind of gel together, which is obviously what has happened with the record that they have. I mean, they finished October as this, second spot in the Metropolitan Division behind the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess a lot of it comes down to, how the Devils have been the last couple years. I mean, they've been at the bottom of the standings, and we know this is as a Sabres fan. I mean, same thing, bottom of the standings. We see it, and they've been firing coaches left and right, and then the Devils. I mean, they go from, I believe it was John Hines to Lindy. And we know Lindy really well in Buffalo, and we love him. We admire him so much, but you kind of always felt like his message would get old after a while, and I wonder if that was feeling the way that for the Devils. And now they read off 6 out of 7 wins. Jesper Bratt looks amazing. He's got 15 points in 9 games so far this year. Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes are finally coming into their own. Jack Hughes especially is looking like that number 1 center they drafted. And when you look at, and I'm gonna look at some of their analytical numbers, they are incredible. It's incredible how good this team is playing offensively. I mean, looking at an expected goals for percentage, I know you said that you don't really do analytics all that much. I mean,
big analytical person.
Their lowest expected goals for percentage player is their top rookie, Alex Holtz, at 57%. 57% is dead last for the team, and 57% on most teams is really good. Is either good, really good, or it's middling. If Alexander Holtz was doing this on the Sabres right now, he would be their fifth on in expected goals for percentage, just based off of that percentage. I mean, that's an insane numbers right there. Everybody else is above 60%. That's incredible. You're looking at expected goals for per game. I'm looking at most players are in the 4 range, the 3 range. Those are insane numbers that they're putting up so far. And I go over off of these numbers, but what have you seen that they've been doing so well with that kind of leads to these numbers being the way they are?
I think going back to what you were saying about Lindy Ruff, as a team last year, nothing went right for them. They had injuries, nothing went right. So I think it's really hard to put the blame on one person for that because there were so many factors that went into it last year. But the one thing that you do see with Lindy Ruff is all of the young stars that you just mentioned play very well individually for him. So it was a matter of the team really just coming together. And now you're seeing that talent that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing them come together as a unit. Even the fourth line that he's put together of Wood, Bastian, and McLeod, they have, I think, 4 points in their last 3 games. And that's the fourth line. And there was a historic issue with New Jersey was depth. And now you're seeing that they have that up and down the lineup, which is why the team is being so successful right now.
Yeah, and I guess too, like you look at last year, injuries played a big part of it too. I mean, they signed Dougie Hamilton in this, in that offseason prior, and he gets hurt. He misses a bunch of games. Miles Wood missed most of the season.
Yep.
I think Jack Hughes was hurt at one point too, and then their goaltending just wasn't good enough as well. And I mean that's probably been their biggest weakness so far this season is the tandem of Blackwood and Vanacek. So, you wonder if the Devils are going to be able to keep up the play and maybe keep winning and keep up putting these numbers up despite the goaltending being subpar and really just bad in general. I mean, Vanacek at 5v5 right now has an 882 save percentage and Blackwood has an 866. That's at 5v5. That's not good enough. You cannot win. You expect to win long term with those numbers. In all situations, Vanacek's at 899 and Blackwood's at 868. I mean, that's like I said, you can't win that. You can't win that way. So I see this and I just immediately am thinking something's got to give. Like they could keep putting up these really good numbers, but if their goaltending isn't good enough or at least average, I don't know how much more they can win in like in January or February or March.
I mean, the goaltending's been decent. And I think this is a team where you don't need excellent goaltending if the team can keep up the pace that it's playing right now. Because I believe the numbers are going into tonight's contest. The Devils have 354 shots on goal, which is third in the league behind the LA Kings and the New York Rangers, who have played more games than the Devils. They also have limited their opponents to, I think, 25 shots or under since the entire month of October. Now, what we do know from watching the Toronto Maple Leafs is you can't just expect your team to put up 9 goals a night and then not take care of your defense and your goaltending because it's not going to work for you, especially in the postseason. We see that with Toronto year after year.
Right.
The Devils, they don't need, like I said, they need just average goaltending at this point because guess what? The blue line has improved. John Marino and Jonas Siegenthaler, steals. Tom Fitzgerald needs to take a bow for getting those 2 players. And I am always of the belief is you see these players that go out and get 9-year contracts for $9 million or 8-year contracts for $9 million. And I'm like, those aren't your impact players. Look at Johnny Gaudreau with Columbus. Columbus is not doing well. And it has nothing to do with their forwards. It has everything to do with their goaltending and their defense. The Devils now have a well-rounded roster with their forwards who can, your superstars with Heischer, Bratt, and Hughes, and now you have a defensive core of Marino, Siegenthaler, Hamilton that can also average things out. So I think with New Jersey, it's not as, for me, I'm not looking at this juncture of the season as them being like, oh my God, we're at a critical place with the goaltending. It just needs to be average. As long as the skaters can keep doing what they're doing, just average goaltending is going to be enough to at least keep this team competitive.
Yeah, I guess that's ultimately going to be the worry for me. Like you just said, it's keeping the goaltending steady. I mean, if the Devils are going to keep playing this way and keep putting up these numbers, I mean, it might mask the goaltending as a whole just because they're going to be having the puck more often than the other team. So how can the goalies be a liability if the team has the puck all the time?
Yeah.
That's gonna, that could mask it a lot. It's just a matter of it. I guess it's just a matter of it being sustainable.
Yeah,
that's always been the worry.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, worst case scenario is Vanacek gets injured, or Blackwood gets injured again. But I will say that Jonathan Bernier has been skating with the team. Now, I personally don't have a lot of faith in goaltenders that are coming off of a hip surgery because we've seen it multiple times with Corey Schneider, Tuukka Rask. So I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket, but it's another option. And I think that's something that New Jersey did not have last year. They didn't have options at goaltending, which is why they had to get Andrew Hammond at the trade deadline. There was nobody else to even pick from. So it's good to have Jonathan Bernier, part of practice. He's not ready to come back yet, but it's good that he's there and potentially can be available in the future if an injury does occur, because it's hockey. Injuries are going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And another injury that that the Devils are suffering now too is Andre Palat's out for a little while. What's his impact been so far?
He's been good. He's been a really good addition to the top six. I think once again, talking about depth, Fabian Zetterlund has kind of jumped into that top line role. He's done very well. I think his first game back into the lineup, he had 7 shots on goal. Like, he was flying all over the ice. And I think, again, that's something that the team didn't have last year. When there was an injury, there was nobody to step up into that role. So it is unfortunate that they're going to be without Palat for a certain amount of time. That timetable has not been determined yet, because he still has to go to the doctor and do some more, evaluations and see how he is. But it's good to know that there are players like Fabian Zetterlund, like Alexander Holtz, who's been a healthy scratch, that can come in and fill that void to a certain degree to keep things, afloat.
Yeah. So one of my favorite prospects going into last year's draft was the guy the Devils took, Simon Nemec, taking him 2nd overall. He ultimately didn't make the roster. He's playing in the AHL right now. Going back to training camp, what did you see out of him that you really liked? What do you think he needs to work on in the AHL before he can make that NHL jump?
He's a steady defenseman. I'm a big believer of let your defenseman develop. Like, it's a known fact that defensemen take longer to develop in the league versus a forward or any other position. So let him take his time, because at the end of the day, the Devils' defense is set, and they have Kevin Ball, who's been a healthy scratch, as a 7th that can jump in as well. There's no need to rush him, and he does have to get used to just like the size of the ice in North America. Like, that's just like, there's little adjustments that come with that I think people don't really realize, but it does impact the game. So let him just develop in Utica, work with the coaching staff down there. There's no need to rush him at this point to get him into the NHL, because I think, looking back, a lot of fans complained about that's kind of what happened with Adam Larson, was they pushed him into the league. Then he didn't do as well. Fans kind of, not, I don't want to say turned on him, but I can't think of another word. So I'm just going to go with
soured,
that.
I guess. Maybe,
But now he's in, Seattle, and he's doing so well. And it's like, oh, we shouldn't have left, we shouldn't have traded Adam Larson.
Well,
so
I mean,
let this kid, he's 18, let him develop in Utica. There's no need to get him into the NHL at this point in time.
It's funny. It's funny you bring that up too, because it's like they traded him for Taylor Hall. Yeah. It doesn't matter. That's a trade you make any day of the week. I mean, unless Adam Larson was a Norris caliber defenseman or a top, 25 defenseman, top 20 defenseman in the NHL, you get the opportunity to get a dynamic scoring winger that they did need at the time, in Taylor Hall, a guy who does have, who had that at the time of the trade, 30, 40 goal potential as a winger. You make that deal. And then he ended up winning an MVP with the Devils anyway, and helped them get back into the playoffs a few years ago too. Like, I mean,
he also brought the team Dawson Mercer and Jonas Siegenthaler when we traded Taylor Hall to Arizona. So at the end of the day, I think the Devils did win that trade with just those two aforementioned players. But it's one of those things where, you see the Devils and it's like, okay, they have nobody to score. So you obviously need to go out and get a goal scorer. You go get Taylor Hall. Then you have the offense, and now you see holes in the defense. It's like, well, we shouldn't have traded Adam Larson, because now that's and it's just a constant cycle until you find the pieces like Tampa where you actually don't have any holes and you have a full lineup.
Yeah, I think a lot of that could easily just come down to drafting at the time too. I mean, if you could afford to trade a guy like Adam Larson, but then you have a next guy up who could take that spot, then you feel a heck of a lot better about yourself. Yeah. Or same thing, you trade a guy like Taylor Hall, but you don't have anyone coming in who could take his spot right away. You're gonna see those holes coming in later, later on immediately. And yeah, I mean, they ended up getting Dawson Mercer out of that as a young guy they drafted. Their center core down the middle is gonna look really good for the next 10 years potentially, with Hischier, Hughes, and Mercer. 1, 2, 3, and yeah, I mean, I love Jesper Bratt so much. I've been saying he's such an underrated player for so long, and now
Mhm.
if he keeps his pace up, he's going to be a prime breakout candidate of the year
You
kind of
know,
player.
good for him. He really did bet on himself, and
Yeah,
he's delivering.
he's
So
going to cash in.
good for him.
Yeah, and it's good to see. It is good to see Miles Wood back too. I mean, he's a
Oh yeah.
guy who's from this area as well, and missing mostly last year. He's a little pesty kind of player too. I recall.
He is. He gets in your face. He
Yeah.
plays a physical game. He has a lot of speed for him being kind of like a bigger guy. I mean, Jesper is he's a pretty, like, as far as hockey players are concerned, Jesper is pretty small in stature.
Mhm.
Wood's just a bigger guy. But yeah, I said a bunch of times last year, I said what Miles Wood brings to the ice, they didn't have it last year. Nobody could replicate what he did. And the team really missed that. So it's so good to see Miles Wood just out, not really playing at 50%. He's playing at 100%. He's hitting guys. He's using his speed. You know, he's very transparent in the locker room with us, with the media. And it's just great to see him back on literally all levels.
Yeah, definitely. And his impact comes into play really almost immediately. I mean, and when I going over the numbers earlier, I mean, Miles Wood is a 67% expected goals rate, and expected goals per 60 is 3.4, and that's 15, and at that number, that's 15th on the team. That's these are just numbers that teams are that the top guys are going to have, and he's doing this while playing in the bottom six in the lineup. I mean, I'm on daily faceoff right now, and he's on the line with McLeod and Nate Bashan. That's listed as their fourth line right now. So doing that on the fourth line is incredible.
It's
Like,
their energy line.
yeah, and I haven't seen numbers like this for quite a while, really. I mean,
yeah,
I guess it's really just a matter of keeping it up, and can they keep this up later on? And Devils, I mean, a lot of these guys are still really young too, so they absolutely can keep this up. I mean, I'm just going to open up Cap Friendly real quick. I just want to make sure I got the ages right on all these. Obviously, I know. Obviously, like Hughes is 23. Hughes is 21. Heischer's 23, and like Brat's 24. Wood is 27.
Yep.
No, he's like one of the older guys, which is insane to think. You got Sharon Govich too, who's 24. Holtz is 20. Mercer's 21. Zetterlund comes in. He's 23. So you got these young guys who are coming in and taking steps and leading the way immediately. That's incredible. That's incredible to see. And then on defense, which is definitely the more experienced part of it, with Hamilton being 29. It's hard to believe John Marino is only 25, and he's effectively playing like a top pairing defenseman, getting all the tough matchups.
There's no doubt that for the first month, John Marino was the team's MVP. There's not a doubt in my mind. He gets the tough assignments. He had to go against Nathan MacKinnon. He kept him off the score sheet on Friday. He went up against Johnny Gaudreau on Sunday, and he kept him. I think he was only limited to one shot on goal. So John Marino has been a pleasant surprise. But guess what? That's what you do when teams are on that like cap crunch, and they have to move a player. Other teams can take advantage, and that's exactly what happened, which is how the Devils got Marino in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, they traded Ty Smith for him, effectively, who just never really worked out.
He's in the AHL right now.
Yeah, so like there you go. Just really shows them, and also too, you take advantage of a cap strapped team. I mean, Pittsburgh has always been against the cap, and they're always having to move guys out. And yeah, John Marino ended up being that, and the Devils took advantage of it, and it's paid off. And they did the same thing with getting Siegenthaler too. From
on a team-friendly deal.
Yeah,
they just signed him.
From Washington, I believe.
Yes, it was Washington.
Yeah. And even Ryan Graves, the same thing. They got him for cheap. I think they only got him for like a mid-round pick.
It was they sent Mika. Well, I'm going to pronounce his last name, but they did send a forward over to Colorado. But he also played majority in the American Hockey League, I believe.
Yeah.
Mikhail
Maltsev.
There you
That's
go.
the name.
I'm going to butcher it.
Wonderful place.
I was like, I know.
Maltsev in a second round pick. Cap Friendly is wonderful for that.
Yeah, I don't think he played enough to actually earn a Stanley Cup ring last season.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I got really nothing else more about the Devils. They're just an interesting team to watch. I'm really interested to see how they continue this pace. For people who don't know, tell Kristy, tell the people where they can find you and find your work.
Oh, okay. So you can find me on Twitter at instalettos_NHL. This is my second season as being a credentialed media member. So I'm in the locker room talking with the guys. You can find me on the Hockey Writers. I'm trying to do an article a day, article every other day. So you'll find me consistently on there. And on Instagram, you can find me skating in stilettos.
Anything else that you do? Any other passions that you have with hockey? I mean,
so many. I want to dive into like every avenue that I could take. I have clothes that I sell that I'm going to be opening up an Etsy shop. I have a podcast in the works. I have a book in the works. I have like any avenue I could take that can keep me working in hockey. I am doing it.
That's awesome to see, Kristy. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right. So we will be right back. We'll take a quick break. And when we come back, I got Jonathan Reddy coming on the show at JRedShow on Twitter. We're going to talk the Sabres. We're going to review the last week of Sabres games. I hope you watched last night's game. The Sabres destroyed the Red Wings 8-3. Tage Thompson with a 6-point night. It was awesome to see. But in the meantime, we will be right back. Tonight's show is brought to you by John and Mary's, a Buffalo tradition for pizza, subs, and wings since 1952. From hoagies, subs, and wraps to traditional pizza and wings, John and Mary's menu is packed with old-time flavors and a few modern twists on classic recipes. You could cool down with Perry's ice cream or warm up with a cup of homemade soup. If you're not in the mood for pizza or wings, we have plenty of other options. Seafood platters, burritos, fresh salads, and more. There is something fresh and delicious for everyone at your table. Catering, online ordering, and delivery options available. Located in the heart of Buffalo's Theater District, the Buffalo Dinosaur Barbecue occupies a former vault that stored movies for Universal International Pictures. Dinosaur Barbecue has been in Buffalo since 2014 and is located on 301 Franklin Street. Looking for a food stop after your day trip to Niagara Falls? Only 30 minutes away. Back at it with the Ranting cast. Frank Arcuri is here. I got John ready. It looks like he's almost all set to go. John, are you there?
Hello.
You can barely hear you, John. I can barely hear you.
Hello.
Yep, I got you, John. Sorry about that. So I'm back with.
I might not be getting good Wi-Fi.
Okay, well, how about this? Disconnect and just join back in. I'm gonna start. Just keep going. As John does that, let's go over the last week of Sabres hockey. I mean, right as I said right before the break, 8-3, destroying the Detroit Red Wings last night. Tage Thompson, 6 points, 3 goals, 3 assists. Incredible. At 5v5, the Sabres had 61 shot attempts. Overall, they had 73. Detroit had 33 overall the whole game. At 5v5, Detroit had 27. High danger chance, the Sabres had 9. They get 6 goals at 5v5. That's just at 5v5. Incredible numbers, incredible night on Halloween. Eric Comrie looks solid. The Larkin goal that he allowed, that was a shorthanded goal. Complete bad luck. Let's be real about that. Larkin makes a pass over, tries to get it over to a streaking winger, and it goes off a power skate right to Larkin. Comrie moves to his right because that's where the pass is going, and the left is wide open. And what can you do? What can you do? I mean, in terms of actual shots, 40-14 was the total. So scoring chances, 25 for the Sabres. Like they were the better team from start to finish. And they got their chances really from areas where they had been doing for that all season long. Let's get John right back on. John, there we go. How we doing?
This. Yeah, this device works a lot better. Hello, everyone.
How you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. At my parents' house right now, so having a great day. Had a great Halloween, a great Buffalo sports weekend. Can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Red Wings game from last night. I mean, Thompson 6 points, incredible night. Like you might not see a better night out of him for the rest of his career, really.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not see that game because I was busy trick or treating, but I did hear about the results. I really like what I see from Tage Thompson from this year, and really the entire team. I mean, there's been some downfall. There's been some pratfalls. There's been some slumps. I did see the Chicago game where it started off real ugly, but they kept hammering at it, and they just got hot from the end of the Chicago game, outscoring their opponents. Let's see, it was 3-1 in the it was 3-1 in the Chicago game.
Yeah. And they scored 3 straight goals to win it and win it overtime. The funny thing is about that Chicago game, like the Sabres were the better team, same thing from start to finish. The numbers are very similar between the Chicago and Detroit game. The puck just didn't go in for Buffalo until the third period, really. And then once the puck started going in, there you go. Like they were gonna you knew they were gonna win. Like it never really, like even though they were down 3-1, you felt like, are they getting goalie tonight by some random guy who you've never heard of before? And then it looked that way, and then it's 3-2, and it's like, okay, they're back in it. At least, that's good. And they're still outplaying Chicago. They've still been the better team throughout the game. And then Thompson bats the puck out of midair to tie it. And then Olofsson wins it overtime. So like, I mean, I look at the chances. I mean, Sabres had 64 chances of shot attempts at 5v5 to 38 for Chicago. They had 37 shots at 5. This is, remember, these 5v5 numbers. The expected goals for percentage in the Chicago game was almost 60% for the Sabres, where it was 66% last night. And even going to the Montreal game was like a dead even split at 5v5 in the expected goals percentage category. So like, but they're still putting up tons of shots. I mean, they're still at least giving themselves these opportunities, and that's why you kind of have to feel good about this team and where they're going at. The last few years when we've seen these hot starts and hot times where they're just winning games out of nowhere, really, because it's coming out of nowhere. Because most times they haven't been the better team, and either they're the ones goalieing another team, like the 10-game, like we all like to reference the 10-game winning streak. A lot of that was major puck luck, and Carter Hutton and Linus Ullmark were literally stealing games, especially Carter Hutton. They're not asking Comrie and Anderson to steal games. They're just asking them to make one more save than the opponent, and that's what they've been doing so far. They've had a couple games where that hasn't, been the case. The Seattle game, I mean, that was their first dud of the year. Their first true, like, okay, this was a bad game. Well, otherwise, I was gonna say, otherwise they haven't really laid an egg in any other game they've played this year. Every game they've played has been competitive right from start to finish, where at moments they look like the better team, or they just have been the better team right away, and they're beating opponents that are inferior to them. And when you look at the progress of this team overall, that's what you want.
I can agree with that. I mean, I also want to say the Edmonton game, that was probably the one game I really felt like goaltending stole the game, but yeah. You pretty much told what I'm about to say. Like, they are outchanced and outshooting their opponents. And versus the 10-game losing streak, and another more evidence that this is sustainable, that this Sabres team is for real, and this is not just a hot streak. I mean, it's not just this past month of October. It goes back to the end of last season. The last 3 months of hockey, the Sabres have played quality hockey. I mean, their record is there was 16-9 the last 2 months last season. So that's up to 22-12 in the last 3 months of hockey. So this is not a fluky start. I still think the division is way too tough for the Sabres to make the playoffs, but I do expect this team to be fighting for a playoff spot late in the season, meaningful games in April.
Yeah, and ultimately that's what it's all about. I'm now that we're in November, I'm gonna start taking a look at what the analytical numbers are saying. So I'm on Evolving Hockey right now, and the Sabres are pretty much right around a break even team. Giving up just as much as what they're getting. Just over 50% expected goals percentage. Expected goals for per 60 is 2.8, while their expected goals against per 60 is 2.78. So it makes, and a lot of time, you see it makes sense. They do give up a lot of good opportunities. And you're seeing in either Anderson has stolen, a couple games. I mean, you could argue he stole the Vancouver game too. You could argue he stole the Ottawa game as well. Comrie has Comrie's been the guy. He's played 6 games and he's basically been that break even. At 5v5, he's got a 913 save percentage, which is solid. Which is solid. It's kind of right around where I'm asking him to be at. His goal saved above expected is literally 0.01. So he's basically been a break-even goalie. He's giving up the goals that he's expected to give up. So
goaltending was my biggest concern heading this season, but I think Comrie and Anderson is just a breath of fresh air. I mean, even though you don't want to see them steal games, you want to see the Sabres dominate from start to finish. It is refreshing to see Anderson and Comrie steal games, especially Comrie. I really liked what I see from Comrie. It's been a while since we've had a good goalie. Maybe probably Ryan Mill, and it's refreshing to see these goalies step up the way they are.
Yeah, absolutely. There's still so many more games to play as well. They're only 9 games in. You got Pittsburgh tomorrow, who, well, haven't been playing well recently. I believe they're on a 4-game losing streak right now, and they're playing Boston right now. So you're going to get Pittsburgh on a back-to-back. Jari's starting for them tonight. The game's actually just about to start, but they've lost games recently. They were just on their own Western swing, and so that means you're likely going to be facing 4-game losing streak. You're likely going to be facing Casey DeSmith tomorrow. It's another winnable game against a quality opponent. I mean, Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, Rust, Letang. So, and now Raquel's there. So this is another team that you can absolutely take advantage of, tomorrow night. And then they play
Carolina.
Yeah, Carolina on Saturday.
This week is going to be Friday versus Carolina, and then Saturday versus Tampa Bay. So after Pittsburgh, they got 3 straight quality opponents. 2 bona fide cup contenders. That'll be a lightning rod to see where this Buffalo Sabres team stands. I guess my question, although as they say, any given game, my question for you is, why do you think we struggle against Seattle? In all 3 games, the Sabres have lost against the Kraken. They just could not get off their heads. Do you think it's just a bad matchup, or is there any reason why you think you look bad versus Seattle?
It's funny too. Like, Seattle kind of just feels like the old Atlanta Thrashers. Like, the Sabres just always have a hard time playing against them. There's always going to be teams that like that. I think one of the things I notice is like Seattle is a good team offensively. They can generate a lot of offense, and the Sabres have always struggled against teams that can just generate offense. And that was just a night where they didn't get the goaltending. Realistically, when you look at the numbers, and I look at like a heat map of where a lot of the shot attempts are coming from. Seattle's shot attempts came in a vast majority of them were in an area where the Sabres have been thriving themselves, in front of the net, in between the face-off dots, below, and in between the goal line, that little like rectangle area around the goal crease and to the face-off dot. Seattle got a high majority of their shots from there, and ultimately in that game, the puck just went in the net for them, and the Sabres couldn't generate the offense in that area where they do like to. Seattle is I think Seattle is also improved a lot so far this season. Their biggest question, it continues to be their goaltending. Then that was a night where they got good goaltending. It worked out for them. It's not going to happen all the time. It just so happened to have been against the Sabres. The Seattle right now, maybe they're just a matchup nightmare based on how they play, because they can defend well against the Sabres and what they do. And also too, I mean, the Sabres it was the end of a 4-game road trip. They were, you got to take into account fatigue setting in. I mean, they had 2 days off, but they were traveling a lot. I mean, they go from playing, they go to Edmonton to play, then they travel to Calgary, play Calgary, travel to Vancouver, play Vancouver, and then you have to travel to Seattle. You do get a day off, but that's a lot of moving around and traveling and playing that they've done really over the last week. So it was about a dud was bound to happen. And if you would have if you would have told me that they were going to get 6 out of 8 points in that 4-game road trip, I don't care where you didn't get those 2 points. Give me 6 of 8 every time. I don't care where it comes from. Just get the points. They were over 500 on a road trip that looked tough going into. Everyone was assuming, well, they're going to lose to Edmonton. They're probably going to lose to Calgary. Maybe they lose to Vancouver, and you should beat Seattle, but it ended up being the opposite. Like, they beat 3 good, they beat two cup contending opponents, and one who has struggled heavily out of the gate, I thought Vancouver was going to be much, much better this season. And I mean, that they're just proving me wrong about that. And Seattle just ended up being that dud. I would bet that if Seattle was the first game road trip, they win that game.
I can agree with that, but as you just said, this is the NHL. Bad teams beat good teams all the time, so you can't take it for granted. Another player I want to talk about is Rasmus Dahlin. Like, if you want to talk about all the players that have really contributed to the Sabres turnaround, I think Dahlin's number one. He had like an NHL point record for I forgot the record was, but he's just having a phenomenal start, and he's a huge reason why the Sabres look so much better.
Oh my God. I mean, he's finally having the good start that we've been asking for since he got here. Last few years, just he starts the season slow and then he ends the season really well. Well, now he's starting the season really well, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And before Samuelsson went down with his knee injury, him and those two together almost felt like a perfect pairing. Samuelsson is such a good defender. He really helps mitigate any of Dahlin's defensive deficiencies in his own end, and allows Dahlin to thrive offensively. And even when Samuelsson goes down, I mean, Dahlin's still, he's doing what he wants in the offensive zone. It's a beauty of what coaching can do as well. I mean, Granato's just letting Dahlin cook offensively, letting him do what he wants, letting him make a mistake and letting him learn from it. That's all. And that's another thing that's just been a breath of air to see. I mean, we're seeing, and to go to another player, another first overall pick, Owen Power. He's, I think he's struggled a lot this year, but it's also, he's a rookie. What do you expect? Let him make the mistakes. Let him learn from those mistakes. Don't chastise him for it as well. I want to hear your opinion too on Owen Power as well.
I have to say, I know he's had his struggles, but I really like what I've seen from Owen Power. I mean, I think once he comes into his own, maybe like a year or two, he's going to be another quality defenseman that the Sabres really need to go over the top. So, I mean, I know people have argued against the tank, but after getting the number, I really think getting the number one pick for Dahlin and Power will benefit this team on the long term.
Oh, absolutely will. It 100%. I mean, for God's sakes, check this out. Dahlin's expected goals above replacement. Okay. I was just to say this right now though. His expected goals above replacement is 8.1. I've never seen a number like that out of any Sabres team in quite some time. That is, by the way, third overall in the league. There's only 2 players in the league who have a better expected goals above replacement than Rasmus Dahlin. Erik Karlsson, who's off to a really nice start in San Jose, and Gabriel Velarde, who's off to a rocket start for the Kings. That should tell you the impact of this start that Dahlin has had. Ron's not here tonight, but he asked a comment. He sent a comment and asking a question. Playoffs, so to answer that question, if the Sabres can make the playoffs, the answer is they can make the playoffs. Ultimately, though, will they make the playoffs is the biggest question. I do not know. That's really going to come down to where the team is.
Sorry,
go. No, it's all good, John. It's all good. I was going to say, Ron asked a question about playoffs, and I'm just saying, like, I really think it matters on where the team is coming out of November and really where the team is going into, February. Because if they at the very least just keep playing this way and keeping themselves in it, you're talking about the team being in the hunt going into March, going into the trade deadline. And if they're in the hunt, I mean, they may buy at the deadline as well and add to this roster. We don't know that, but if they keep playing the way they are and they keep winning games, it certainly is possible. I'm going to say, to really just answer the question of playoffs, I would say maybe. Don't hold your hopes up for it, but it's certainly there right now. Since we're talking right now, it's certainly there. What do you think?
I think the problem is the division is still way too hot to turn hard. Boston's really good right now. So is Florida. Right, Toronto. Toronto's having a lot of problems, so maybe we can jump ahead of Toronto. Tampa Bay. I mean, they're the champions. But I think I can boldly say that the Sabres are better than Detroit, Ottawa, and Montreal. So maybe if we can get out of Toronto, but then you got the Metropolitan wild card round. So I would love to see the playoffs, but I'm not giving my hopes up. I'll be happy with me games in April. Meaningful games in April, about 8, and just show life.
Yeah, ultimately that's where I'm at too. I still think the top 4 is going to be Boston, Florida, Tampa, Toronto. Toronto will get their stuff together. They will. It's funny to see everything that they're going through, though. It really is, but they'll get it together. Tampa's even off to a slow start by their standards, but they'll get it together as well. They don't care about the regular season. To them, it's all about the playoffs, and that's really ultimately all that matters. It's 5 teams coming out of the Atlantic for the playoffs is definitely in the air. It's definitely in the realm of possibility. I mean, but with how, I just had Kristy on in the last segment, talking the New Jersey Devils, like if they keep up the way they're playing, they could get in. They're another team that can be a threat for the playoffs. Carolina's obviously a contender. So are the Rangers. Philly's off to a hot start themselves under John Tortorella, but you got to wonder if that keeps up. That more than likely won't. And then it's like, can you be better? If Washington and Pittsburgh I would say this, if
after a real start, so
yeah. And I was gonna say too, like if Washington and Pittsburgh keep playing this middling.
I think the big.
I was gonna say real quick. If Washington and Pittsburgh keep playing this middling game and really hover around 500, the Sabres if the Sabres are better than those two, they'll be better than Columbus because Columbus has been awful to start the year. If they're better than the Islanders, that's 4 teams in the Metro and 5 teams, including Philly, that you have to be better than. And then if you're better than 3 of the teams in your division, you're the 8th seed. All of a sudden, you're getting in. That's all you need. That's all you need to do is it's a lot to ask, but it's certainly there. It's certainly in the realm possibility, especially if you're beating these teams and these teams aren't, winning games, other games that they should be. Obviously, I mean, John's having some.
Right now,
he's been having.
Do you think the Crosby era and the Ovechkin era is coming to an
end? I mean,
yeah, they have some Wi-Fi.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. Personally, I mean, Crosby's still playing at an unbelievable pace. He's still one of the best players in the league. Ovechkin's still the best pure goal scorer. One of the best pure goal scorers in the league. Still the best pure goal scorer of all time, in my opinion. I mean, the only thing that matters for Washington right now is get Ovechkin beating Gretzky's record. That's it. They would obviously they would love to win another Stanley Cup. Would be great for Ovechkin's legacy, but they got their cup. Ovechkin has his cup now. Now his next mission is to break Gretzky's record. So I can see Washington really, like, I'm not saying that they don't care about winning games and making the playoffs. I just think that, that priority number one is beating Gretzky's record. And if they're probably going to be worrying about that way too much to where they may miss the playoffs because of it. You don't know. I guess we'll have to, see, especially once the Sabres start playing these metropolitan teams as well. But John, obviously, I know you're having a bunch of Wi-Fi issues and everything, but that's going to do it for the show today. You saw the commercials earlier. The show is always brought to you by John and Mary's and Dinosaur Barbecue. Thank you, John, for coming on. Thank you, Kristy, for coming on, talking some Devils. Sabres, they play Pittsburgh tomorrow, Carolina Friday, Tampa Saturday. We'll be on next week. I'm hoping for a guest next week as well. Very fun guest, somebody who I really enjoy talking to, somebody who is very active on Twitter. So, once I get that confirmation, I will let you guys know on Twitter. I'll tag him. You will know who it is. You will love this man. Everyone loves this guy. But until next week, I'm Frank R. Curry. This has been the Ranting Cast.